Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Welcome everybody. So it's another week of CLCI Live, and today we're going to discuss silent but deadly relationship killers. We couldn't hear what you were doing.
Silent killers.
That is not silent.
Silent killer.
Yeah, that's better.
No.
Actually streaming and live, because last time we did this whole thing for like 10 minutes.
I think we are.
Okay.
Before we dive in, which we're going to, I want to remind everybody who's out there watching us to please participate in the conversation, join in the talk, make sure you leave comments, and we want to hear from you through this. We want your input, your feedback, your questions, everything. We're here and we are monitoring comments. So please say hello and interact with us. We certainly 100% want to hear from you. So, all right, so let's talk about this a little bit. We did last year the topic of relationship killers. Now we're talking about the silent ones. What could be what could be a silent? I mean, what does this mean exactly? Anybody?
I could tell a little story. Many years ago, I went to, on the self-help journey of Barbara DeAngelis. She used to be one of the couples counselors or therapists that were out there in the world. And one of the things she would talk about are the silent things that we say to ourselves. Basically, if he drops that sock one more time on the floor and doesn't make it, I'm gonna. So the boundaries don't get set. The silent communication that didn't occur until the blow up occurs. So that's what I'm going to think that we're talking somewhat about tonight.
Yeah.
Which is sort of, could be for sure be called a lack of communication right there, right? We're not sharing our needs, our what have you.
We're not owning a boundary. We're not setting a boundary, and we're not taking responsibility for the boundary to have been met. We're pushing that finger out to the other person, and they don't even probably know much about the boundary, but the expectation is silent. The silent expectation
right is there. I think that was where I was going. I think that's what you were. It's expectation. I think it's the expectation. It might even be the word should. It's that. Never unspoken. I expect this, but I've never shared it with my partner. But I'm going to carry this expectation with me through the relationship and never actually communicate it.
It's actually very true. They have many times when they've come in will share that they should already know this. Why do I have to share this? Like, we all come with the book of how to have a relationship with my partner, which we don't seem to really do. We don't have that book that says this is how to do it. So we must say and communicate and share what that means. Sam?
Yeah, there is, as y'all were talking about that, sometimes there's these expectations that we have even before we get into relationships because of what we read, because of what we see, because of what we are flooded with all the time. Relationships should look like this. Boyfriend should be this. Girlfriend should be this. And when they're not these things, there's this thought that, hey, didn't you read the same manual that I read? Like, what's going on here?
This brings me to like the dangers of fairy tales to some degree, or Disney movies. That silent expectation that every little girl has because they watch all these movies of that's just not realistic. Sorry, don't get me started on like books like Twilight, and they are dangerous on some level because it sets this expectation of this damsel in distress and this fairy tale thing, but the reality is that is not reality, right? That is not real life things. Sorry, just a little past.
You haven't watched Yellowstone yet, I can tell.
What is no, I have not.
Yes. Now there's a girl.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
The chances of things like that actually becoming a reality increase when we talk about what it is that we're looking for.
Mhm.
Then we can start looking at what we have in our heads versus what our partner can deliver. And let's find that reality in between those two versus just ain't you going to get that? Ain't you going to pick up that dish? Ain't you going to pick up that tab? Like, what's going on here?
So much work to talk, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Not for someone like me, no. That is no problem. It's just gonna come rolling right out without any issue from the start.
I think people are just part of that. Not wanting to talk isn't really being lazy. I think it's just having the lack of an ability to be vulnerable. I feel like a lot of us really find it difficult, even with a relationship that we find ourselves wanting to potentially foster into one that's long lasting. We still find it hard to be vulnerable and to open up and connect with someone on a deeper level than we're used to on a regular basis. So I think a lot of that comes from that.
I think
I'm just lazy.
Wait, go ahead. What'd you say, Anthony?
Oh, I said I'm just lazy.
There's that too.
Just to not talk. Don't ever bring anything up. You just let it die in the past. You know, it's water under the bridge.
Mhm.
Is it though? Is it?
Is it?
That's just it,
Is
isn't.
For
Is
me,
it though? Or is it something that's slowly gonna erode your relationship because it's the water is still running, but
I
it's
guess it
eroding.
depends on the stories that we tell ourselves about relationships at the end of the day.
Well,
I think
it also brings baggage. Baggage comes into this, right? Like what you bring to the table, you might be bringing a whole lot of assumptions about somebody else. And oh, look, there Sam's got his baggage.
I like my bag.
And not realize that you are maybe making your partner guilty of your former partner's failings, or assuming that they are going to behave in the same way, and so you never give them the chance or the opportunity to actually show you what they're really going to be like. Yeah. And I see Sam nodding his head.
Oh yeah, you preaching right now.
they're all listen, fellas, they're all the same. They're just going to hurt you.
Uh-huh.
No.
I remember
I
I
don't
walked
have
around
any
with that.
back.
So that's, I mean, how do we fix that?
Well, to speak a little bit from experience on this one, coming from the guy that is nowhere near a relationship guru in any sense, but I found that the best way out of such a cycle of what you said, holding your current partner responsible for things you might have seen in the past, is to truly move through them. It's not going to be comfortable talking about those places where you might have been inconvenienced, hurt, wounded. But if you never bring it to the surface, you never give it the opportunity to get that air of healing. So it's important that you communicate as you see fit in areas where you're ready and they're ready to receive it. That's really important. You can't just dump things on your partner just because they're your partner. Share where you're at, pieces by pieces, and if they're ready for more, give them more. If you're ready for more, give them more.
Is there a way to identify like personally, like when these things happen, when we have this moment of maybe I'm not even aware of it, is what I'm saying. Like if I have no clue, how do I become aware of what I'm bringing, like the load of baggage I have brought with me? I've got a guy, he's carrying it. He's quiet though, so I don't really notice him. So I've got, like the whole cart of that, but I don't even know it's there. So how do you bring an awareness to that? If you maybe it's sort of akin to biases almost, where what do you do? How do you ask yourself, what is it that you can say or do to bring that awareness in the first place? One step for, like, I'm taking it one step before the communicating. Mm-hmm.
I think before. Oh my goodness! Wait, Brooke, I'm distracted by those flowers.
Aren't they pretty?
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
So the step before the communicating, I'm not clear what you mean when you say what do you do one step before the communicating?
What if I don't know? Like, what if I don't know that what my baggage is?
Yeah, so it's the partners. I mean, so there's lots of answers and struggling to come out of me at the moment. The idea when you're in a relationship, if you're in a growth relationship, meaning if you're willing to learn and grow together, then you have to have conversations, but you also, more importantly, have to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you and have that discussion. The things that work for us, I mean, it's lovely. We can have that discussion on the things that work for us, but really it's the things that we're unclear about, and having multiple discussions, as I think it was Sam or somebody said, vulnerability in a vulnerable way, to be open to the flow. If I am not aware that I have all this baggage, then we've got to step towards having that conversation. So I'm not sure how I would be aware of it if I wasn't aware of it. I mean, because that's what your conundrum question is, right?
I think I have a way, but
Yeah.
Anthony, go ahead.
I was gonna say, part of being aware of what you don't know, and this is like with Brooke said, with biases, with baggage, just knowing what you don't know. You know, you can get away with that when you're single because no one's gonna call you out on it.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
if you're in a relationship or in any kind of relationship, not just like romantic, but like with your family, your coworkers, literally anybody else, they get to have a more objective view of what's going on and who you are. And if they know your history and you're open with them about, you know, your past or whatever, they know things about you, they might be able to better identify what is baggage versus what's just, you know.
I'm gonna take it one. I mean, I'm gonna take it to this. I'm gonna take it to this. And then Sam, I see you. I absolutely see.
Yeah.
If there's friction, if there are things, even if there is an inclination of this emotion, this feeling, that something is not right in me, something doesn't feel right, something's not just not working right. The first thing I would say to ask is, what am I bringing here? What am I bringing to this? Like, what about this is me related? And not to just point the finger immediately and but to stop and go, hey, how do I take some responsibility here?
That's great awareness, but I don't think most people are in a relationship are going to do that. They will blame the other person for the trials and tribulations that brought them where they are.
Well, that's why I'm encouraging them to, before they get to the blaming, to first go, hey, what is wrong with me?
And in that space, it's really important to, specifically in your season of singleness, to get a good look at where you are with the most basic human emotions: happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, grief. If you can establish what the good and bad about yourself is in every single one of those places, you can be proactive before you get to that place where you're either blaming or finger pointing, because it's all about preparing for battle before the battle. If you try to prepare for battle during it, you're going to get killed.
I'm going to call it emotional inventory. Take
Boom.
emotional inventory of your life, of yourself, of you, and how you're going to react in any given situation. And just always have that awareness. And I think it comes to also even being able to recognize when those emotions are starting to come to the surface, right? Whatever they be, good, bad, otherwise. Identifying that change in chemistry, that change in feeling, and sort of becoming aware around what causes those things. I mean, it's really self-awareness is I think it's the key to change, honestly.
And it doesn't stop. It does not stop when you're single. It doesn't stop when you're in a relationship, because you can do that emotional inventory when you're single. And then when you bring another person into the picture that might have a different upbringing than you might find some things pop up that otherwise would not have popped up. And in that space, you have to come back to, okay, what's the good? What's the bad about the situation? What can I learn from it?
I'm going to say too, you might be hungry. You might be tired. You might be having a crappy day. And for whatever reason, now all of a sudden, this thing is just driving me bananas. And that's, again, another way to emotional inventory. Okay, wait, have I fed myself? Have I gotten enough sleep? Before I get to like pointing my finger at other people, I need to do a little inventory here.
How about you?
Which is true, but I mean, it's also the thought process. It takes two in every relationship. It always involves two people. So every given situation, both people have to take a moment to go, okay, wait, we aren't working. This is a we problem, right?
Mhm.
It's not just a me problem or a you problem. It's a we problem.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry, I'm off my soapbox now.
Oh, we love your soapbox. Get it.
Definitely projection. Lots of projection goes on in relationships when you're not recognizing your part into it. So that's what you're talking about is right on the money. I mean,
Well,
so much we put onto the other person based on what our expectations and who we are. Go ahead, Brooke.
No, you're fine. No, keep going with the project in the same space. That that thought process. It's when we stop thinking about we and start thinking about I.
Mhm.
Right?
Mm.
I'm not getting this. I am not doing this. He is not doing this. But if you're thinking about we, you're going to empathize with the other person. Why aren't we succeeding? Why isn't this working for us? The moment I start thinking about in that I space, I'm not in a relationship anymore. I'm just thinking about me and what I am not getting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the whole, I mean, I'm not to say that you are not important in your relationship and to remain an individual, but I think that so much so a lot of times with couples, they get stuck in that I space.
Mm.
Well, and the idea of asking those questions, have you eaten? It's got to be not in a snarky way, right? It's got to be
I don't think
Have you
never
eaten today?
oh, that is not going to be
Have
okay.
you eaten? I think you need to go eat. Let's have you go. I mean, that's just not going to fly either.
It's not about the nail.
Well, also too, I think that when you're exploring and doing that emotional inventory, it's critical. Sam, you just wrote this about biases, and I completely agree 100%. It is critical to not do that from a place of negative judgment. You do it from a place of like, I want to grow and be better and explore this, and I'm not going to judge myself for this. I'm not going to beat myself up. What I'm going to do is figure out how to change it, how to grow from it. And that's a whole other mental, thought.
yeah.
I mean, the reality is when we're in emotional space, we're probably not gonna be able to do any of this.
That's right back to preparing for battle before the battle. Once you're emotional, you are officially in the battle.
I was about to say that's why you do everything possible to just kill your emotions.
I love it. You're like the anti-love guy. I love it.
Be super logical all the time. Don't ever sink to an emotional level in a conversation or argument. Just throw facts at the other person. They're gonna love it. Don't worry.
Wait, so
Do it
you're
all the
saying
time.
by not being emotional, they're going to emit the emotion of love at your lack of emotion, which is logic. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
All right.
Good luck with that one. Oh, good luck with that one.
Well, that's okay. Well, to make this more serious, though, there is that opposite end, and there are people in relationships who are like that. Like, if I just be logical, my partner would understand it. But that's kind of a shoulding, isn't it? My partner should see the logical argument. They should not be emotional.
Borrowing a term again from Barbara, kind of forgot how much I really identified with her. Barbara DeAngelis, she called it tanking. If I'm calm and you are looking crazy, she's saying what I'm doing is I'm stuffing my emotions. So it's got to come out somewhere. And it's only going to come out of the partner I'm with. Because if I'm in this state of not being really calm, but I'm stuffing down what I'm really feeling, it's a misnomer to expect that experience to have a happy ending.
Not
Well,
everyone responds to facts and logic the exact same way, as we've all learned in the last 2 years alone.
Who is that?
I know,
Facts,
right?
facts and logic don't have feelings.
I
I'm
will
Ben
also
Shapiro
say
now.
though, yes, well, yes. We're not going to delve into that. Anyways, what I will say though is if you are a person that is based in that very factual, that very sort of critical thinking, that is what you do. You're gonna have a partner that probably speaks your language.
Mm.
That is able to understand you and the way you are coming from, and you guys are going to develop if both parties are happy and content and it's a healthy relationship, let's say all of that, there's probably going to be a sort of language they both speak and a level of satisfaction that is brought on in whatever language they are in. Right? We may not understand it from an outside perspective, but that doesn't mean that it's not functioning for them. And it might be what I want, but it might be what somebody else wants.
But what if they're not
I
speaking?
think if you bring it in, oh, sorry, Anthony.
Oh, I was gonna say, but isn't that why we're discussing relationship killers in the first place, the silent ones? Because sometimes you're not speaking the same language, and you don't even know that you're not speaking the same language. They're just on like two different levels of existence, and only some of the radio static is getting through, and it just sounds, completely insane to you. But to the other person, they're making complete sense, and they're not getting why you're not understanding their point of view, which is why the silent relationship killers come into play.
And mic drop.
Boom. All right, we're done with the live.
You're done.
We can move on to another topic, which here's catastrophizing. This is sort of it falls in the realm of black and white thinking, exaggerating. Where I'm going to even take it one step further and say maybe I'm somebody that is always sort of catastrophizing or disparaging my partner even when they're not around. Like, I'm just one of those people. He's always this. He's always that. It's always going to be this. Things are going to end terribly. Like, it's these great, giant, catastrophic conclusions that are always being jumped to. Again, it sort of falls in that realm of not giving the other person a chance to sink or swim, but just assuming that no, it's going to be a catastrophic outcome.
Well, it's like an example of like the slippery slope bias, where like I see sorry, I see this on TikTok sometimes. I don't know why TikTok is like sending me relationship TikToks, but it's like the one where like the guy just like he just kind of turns over in his sleep to face the other direction away from his partner, and the partner's just like, he hates me. He's going to break up with me now. That's an example, a funny example of catastrophizing, but it's taking these little tiny things and then, okay, then that means this. And because it means this, it means that. And because it means that, then it means the worst possible, outcome. Where I don't know if it starts off as a black and white thing, but it starts off as it's like you're starting off something small and turning it into something bigger than it really is.
Yeah.
So how do you
it's the overthinking piece, that overthinking where we think it's something to death and make it so not what it is. What is our point of this conversation when are we trying to help those that are doing that come
what's the solution, right? We're defining the problem and then presenting the solution.
It's overthinking. It's overgeneralization. It's the slippery slope, like Anthony brought up. It's all of those things. Yeah.
So what do I do then, as if I have a partner who catastrophizes and I don't do that, but I see it happening? How do I start the conversation without like just saying, "Oh, you're making a big deal out of this"?
You don't do it in the moment. You can't do it in the moment. That's a killer.
Yeah, you definitely don't say something like, "This isn't a big deal. You're making a big deal out of this," but instead posing it as a question. What's your thought process behind this action, behind these words? Really turning it into a space of curiosity, because all of this is an interpretation of what we've defined as hostile action, loving action, something that we've already created in our minds. And until we get clarity on the action of the word with our partner by opening our mouths and asking, we're going to continue to over catastrophize the smallest thing when we otherwise could get clarity by just speaking about it. It's a silent killer, just as we've been talking about.
Well, and I think it can go both ways, right? If
Mhm.
if the person is catastrophizing, saying, you hate me, you're gonna leave me, the other person, it might be as simple as them saying,
Mhm.
well, why? Or why do you feel that way? Or is that true? Have I yet? um,
Have
is
I
this
yet?
always? Have you? I mean, has it? Are you? Is it? Are you certain? um, I do. I am.
I am.
It's a little bit like the same coaching skills we use when our clients catastrophize in any for any reason. Clients will do that, and then you ask, okay, what are the alternatives? What could this also mean? Or
Yes.
what could this also be instead of this scenario?
I'm gonna
Um,
say in the moment of it, it's just be present. Be
mhm.
present with that person, not take ownership of what they're experiencing. It's a tough place because as soon as you start trying to play coach in that moment, it's gonna feel inauthentic to the person you're with.
I think though
Mm.
too, we're assuming
Mhm.
though, we're talking about silent killers. We're talking about the
Yeah.
little things that erode this. So we're not in a conflict in this point. I mean, I don't want us to assume that what's going
Yeah,
on is there's a fight or a
true,
conflict going on.
true.
These are the things that like slowly erode a relationship until it's like I can't do it anymore. Like this is it just this, and they add up, right? And so this is one of those things that maybe it happens a little bit every day, but it wears down. And I think where it's unfair to the other person, the person that they're saying you hate me, you're going to leave me, is they're not giving that person any credit, right?
Mm.
In that situation, what they're doing is they're not giving their partner the credit for staying there, for being there, because they're always assuming that, the worst. And it's not fair to their partner in
Yeah.
this situation.
I would
Um,
say, quite honestly, what is it? Catastrophizing? Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
Mhm.
Okay, so I think that ultimately, unfortunately, seems to me to be a scenario where you have to, whoever is the one doing the catastrophizing, they've got to be the ones to take care of that themselves. Because I
it
think
is
we're trying to explain what the partner can do. it, I think ultimately they can help. They can try their best to kind of move them out
that's
of that
true.
space of catastrophizing. But I think ultimately this doesn't seem like a cooperative effort that, I mean, I guess it
Well,
can be, but I don't think ultimately a cooperative effort is going to get you the results that you necessarily are looking for as that partner in this scenario.
maybe it's about bringing awareness to them, like
Yeah.
in a way that is not accusatory, right? But bringing awareness into the space of you say to me that you think I hate you a lot. um I don't, but that needs to stop. And then it's up to the other person to go, okay, what do I have to do to change that about me? Right? What is it about me that's bringing this to the table? And that's again the reality that we have to take ownership and a role in our relationships. It's not just up to the other person, it's up to us as well. And it's up to both and individual come into
Mm.
play, like Jerome said. Um,
I almost feel like one of the quickest get out of jail free cards in any situation like this, especially for the silent relationship killers, is both partners sitting down and having the conversation and making it very clear what makes you feel loved,
I was
what
going to
does
say
not make you feel
Ooh,
loved.
good one.
oh, I love that. By the way, I love what makes you feel loved, what makes you not feel loved. Like, and that can be changed too if you're not in a space where you're ready for love, or what makes you feel liked, what
Like,
makes you feel
appreciate, yeah,
appreciated, what makes you feel appreciated, what makes you feel grateful, cared for,
seen,
thankful.
heard,
And
yeah.
heard, seen, anything. What is it that works for you, and what is it? So that languaging can be changed under any given situation. If you have a partner that says doesn't listen to me, he's not communicating, then all it takes is, well, what makes you feel heard?
That's it.
At that point.
Crazy thought, huh? Dang.
Awesome job, Sam. Amazing pants.
I like my pants. They came from Walmart. Thank you. I appreciate you seeing and feeling. I get. Anyway, moving on.
And it's also letting your partner know that you're wanting to approach these conversations. Are they in a place to have this conversation? Because if you're approaching someone and they're not in a space to have this, it's not going to go well then either.
That brings me to another relationship killer that is silent. Avoidance.
Ooh.
Avoidance. I don't want to have this conversation. I don't have time to have this conversation. I'm too busy to have this conversation. I don't want, like, how do you manage that avoidance? Because if we can't talk, we're not ever gonna get better at anything.
Yeah.
See,
Can I say this to somebody who is a recovering avoider? I had to learn how to step out of that. This is going a little bit back into the emotional inventory piece, asking myself, do I want to continue to avoid conversations like this all my life and consequently never have the relationship that I truly want? It's like time to put your big boy pants and your big girl pants on and let's have that conversation, because it's either you do that or you continue to have a shadow of the thing that you truly want. It's like you can't avoid it forever and expect a miracle or a fairy tale like we were talking about, you know?
It's the kind of the concept that nobody is going to save your relationship but you. Like but you both, right? You can't, nobody's going to come in and suddenly make everything all better. Like it's true of real life, of anything, right? There's not some fairy godmother that comes in and says, oh, look at that, everything's great now. Like, no, it takes
There's
work.
not.
I'm sorry to break your heart, Sam. Sorry.
Everything I know is a lie.
Santa Claus isn't real either, and neither is the Tooth Fairy.
Stop, you're breaking my heart. Oh my God.
I've got a question as far as avoidance goes. I think there's a lot of different reasons why people avoid conversations and stuff like that. And my immediate one is just because I'm lazy and I don't want to be bothered with it. But there's also an aspect of like fear, and
There's fear.
sometimes you get that feeling like when you're a little kid and like mom and dad are mad at you and they're having that talk and you're like, you freeze up. You're afraid of conflict.
It's not even
If
just
you're that type of person who's afraid of conflict, how do you manage that avoidance then?
I'm gonna say too, it's when we don't even want to assume it's just conflict. It's fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear of it being insecure, fear of well, I have this, I can, at least I have this. What if happens if I lose this? You know, and so I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to lose it. There's so many levels of fear that can come into it. They keep people just, okay, I'm just not going to share. I'm not going to. And that's a crappy place to be.
What's ironic about that, what's ironic about that avoidance because of fear of loss is that it makes it that much easier for you to lose that thing, because you're not fully seen. You're not allowing yourself to be fully seen or heard. Therefore, your partner's not given the opportunity to serve you in that area of need or even explore if they can, because sometimes you can bring it up and the answer is no. But in that space, one has to be, ironically, courageous enough to speak those words and step into that place with the fear and trembling in their voice. They literally need to sit in that place of fear as they're talking, because it's not about waiting for that storm to pass. It's about being able to hold your ground in that emotional storm, because it's going to come, and it's going to come with a vengeance. But as long as you're able to speak one word in that, you can speak the next word and then the next word and then the next word. It's practice in that proverbial fire, if you will.
That's, I mean, easily said. So hard to do. I mean,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you look at the number of women alone who are in relationships that are abusive, and I will say men and women. Let's say they're in manipulative relationships. And so much of that is born out of a fear of I don't want to be alone. This is what I know. At least there's a whole fear that comes of thought processes. This is the enemy I know. At least I can live with the enemy I know. I mean, out there could be way worse, or there could be nothing, and I could be alone. And so that is, I mean, it's a terrifying place to be. It's tough, and every time I hear of a woman that gets out of one of those relationships, because I'm parts of groups and things like that, I'm like, you are awesome. Like, you right now just taking a huge step, and you are a badass. And it's scary, but you have done the hardest thing. And so it will just get easier from here. I mean, it really will. But it's so scary in those moments. It really, really is, and can be very difficult. Especially if you're in a manipulative relationship where you have somebody that's been belittling you for years and years and years, and you feel this big. So,
well, and codependence. That codependence in the relationships is a silent killer as well. Because if I come and I just rescue, that's not me taking any ownership of my experience. I'm only out there to make sure you're living your life. What about me? But I'm not going to think about that in the beginning until I somehow feel the resentment that's building up in me. And so that's what a lot of the times in new relationships, they get the lovey-dovey experience, but also, like you said, it's the relationship I know. I don't know what else is out there, and so I'm going to stay with this relationship, and I'm going to accept things that I would not normally accept. That codependency is learning how to be independent as you are relying and leaning into each other.
Well, I will say too that the element of we're in the codependent space, right? What's interesting is you typically have somebody who is a giver, right? Somebody who is that is their role. I am a former caretaker to the nth degree, a babyer. I was the oldest, and I babied my brother like to the nth. I mean, there aren't words how much I just wanted to protect him and keep him safe and give him everything he needed, never have him feel any pain. He has to be an adult at some point, right? But in that space, and the reason I bring that up is at some point though, I have to realize all of my giving, all of my generosity may be coming with some level of expectation, which brings us back to the first thing. It comes with the expectation of you're going to love me back.
Yeah.
You're going to wait. If I do this for you, then I expect this in return. And sometimes that's a very manipulative place. I think a lot of people who are professed givers don't acknowledge, and it's something that I was like, okay, I need to be aware that this could be dangerous ground, right? So I mean, again, it's self-awareness. It's always that self-awareness piece where, okay, I'm not going to give with expectation, and I have to make sure that what I give and what I'm doing is I'm giving without expectation. Which is one of the hardest things for people to do, I think. I mean, it can be very difficult for some, especially. Yeah. Thoughts?
Can you say that last part one more time?
The part about giving without expectation?
Yes. Yes.
How we as human beings tend to give, and there's a feeling of strings being attached, right? If it starts to feel like, if I accept this, I'm a little cautious to even accept this gift, because what is the expectation that's going to come with it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
That's another silent killer too.
Yes.
The other end of that.
So then sorry, Anthony. So that's on the receiver's end, right? But on the giver's end, what are you expecting? Like, what are you giving with the intention of getting something back?
It
Go ahead,
can.
Sam.
Oh my gosh, this could honestly be both. Honestly, it could be a silent killer, or I say this delicately, it can be a gateway towards a healthy and reciprocal relationship. And here's why I say that. If you give with the expectation of something in return and it's not something that is realistic, communicated, and something that can benefit all parties, then yeah, that could be a very toxic place to give from. And at that point, it's not really giving, it's almost lending in a sense. Because if I don't get something, I can easily
It's
get
not,
that
it's
generosity
not
back.
giving. They're paying
Oh,
you for it. At that
yeah,
point,
that's it. It's
you
freaking blockbuster. It's blockbuster service in a sense. And on the other hand, if you're in that space where you are being honest with yourself and what you need, being honest with your partner and what you need, when you give, it's not an unrealistic or a toxic expectation. It's we are doing this because we're in a reciprocal give relationship, serve relationship. It's not giving to get something for the sake of saying I got something. It's because this is the culture of our relationship. We work to outgive and outserve one another. I'm gonna shut up now.
No, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I also want to bring up acknowledgement is critical in this. Like acknowledging that when somebody gives, I thank you for that. That means a lot. But then on the same thing, as somebody who's receiving, acknowledging back the gifts that your person gives you, even though they may not be the gifts that the same thing. It's not going to be. It may not be money. They might be giving you gifts a different way, right? And this is where languages of love come in, right? Where somebody might be filling up somebody's cup with one thing, and then the other one's filling up the cup with the other. But nobody should really be taking score. I think, right? In this, like I did X amount, and so and then, like that's that. Like that. There's no scorecard in this.
Well,
There's not, but if it's not a reciprocal kind of experience, it does get old being the one that always goes in and takes care of business, right? Being the one that fixes the moment, being the one that comes in and says, okay, let's talk about this, being that only one. Now there's not a scale, but if that partner doesn't come back and say, I think this is a time I need to have a conversation. This is how I want to express it, set the boundaries around it. I think there is somewhat of a scale. Not in the way that you're saying that as far as keeping track. I did it 2 times and you did it 10 times. It's about that feeling and being able to share, I'd really like you to share with me what's going on for you without me having to be the one that starts this conversation every time.
But I'll say that maybe for some couples that works. Maybe for some couples that works. For me, I want to do the dishes 4 times. You do them 5. This is the deal we've struck with one another. It's perfect. Let's stick by. Maybe there is again that very literal, very. This is our contract. I expect you to what I mean? Maybe that's maybe that's what they need. So I'm not.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like going to the doctor for a checkup. Go out there, check on the relationship, however you got to do it. And I get it. It's not always the most spontaneous or sexy thing that social media says. That's something that the guys or the girls should just know. But you know what? I don't know who needs to hear this, but the internet is not real life.
I almost just went bolt.
I held it bang on live. Oh my gosh.
You should just know is the biggest load of absolute BS I have ever heard in my entire life.
Brooke, say it. You could say the whole word out there. Bullshit.
Because how am I supposed to know what is expected of me, what rules I'm playing by, what anything is if it's not communicated with me? Like that is so dumb. You are setting me up.
Come on.
Brooke, I know you were talking in that space of literally write it down, have the numbers, but relationship, we're not just talking about romantic relationships, even though it's February and Valentine's Day was yesterday or whatever. But imagine whatever. But we're also talking about like imagine like a family relationship. Growing up, we had a list of chores that we had to do, and we understood clearly like Anthony does the dishes these days. My brother takes out the litter box these days. Like, and my parents, give me food and shelter. These are all things. These are all things that, like, I'm sure my parents just like wish that we would have known to do our chores. But sometimes in certain relationships, you just have to lay out the terms of the relationship very clearly.
I'm gonna take it one step further. You don't know where your person, what they have seen demonstrated to them as a healthy relationship. You have no idea what, because if we're mirroring what our parents did, if we're mirroring the relationships we see around them, we have no clue if those relationships were healthy, were good, how they communicated, how. So you assuming somebody should just know when you have no clue what their child. I mean, really, when you're learning, that's absurd. Because there's no way to know if you don't actually talk and say, hey, this is what I know. This is what my language of love is. This is what works for me. This is what doesn't work for me. And that's true in any relationship, just like Anthony said. It's true. I mean, there's an expectation in work, in business, in everything. But it's usually communicated. The one thing about business is we typically communicate what we expect from one another very well in business.
Because it's all about the
money's on the table.
It's because money's on the table. Well, so is it in relationships, unless you got the prenup. I'm just saying.
We went there. That's what we just went there.
Yeah, we did. But that is also another silent killer right there, just so you know. Money can be a huge silent killer in a relationship. Whether I think there's a statistic out there that say most people argue, the little arguments that happen typically over money. Because why do you think that is?
Ooh, different money stories and beliefs that we've grown up with, expectations around money, fears around money. You're literally bringing somebody else into, assuming that your relationship is going in that direction. You're literally bringing another person into that world, and it may or may not be the same thing as yours. So how they feel about spending, saving, investing might be two totally different places. And unless somebody leads out in that conversation, then there's going to be a lot of weird, ambiguous, why are you doing this? And why are you not doing this around money? And it's going to put a strain unless some clarity comes into the what we are going to do versus what I'm going to do and what you're going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I also think that money is itself not a silent killer, but all of the silent killers we discussed apply to money and amplify it even more. So the same I shoulds, the same catastrophizing, the same blame gaming, or everything else also applies to money. And when your relationship with another person, it just gets pumped up because money's important. It's important for a lot of reasons, and I could go on a whole capitalist rant right now why it is, but the fact of the matter is it's important to a lot of people, and sometimes you don't talk about your expectations about money. You just assume that your partner's on the same page when they're really not. And maybe they have a dysfunctional relationship with money or how they were raised around money. And then,
assumption, you might say, is the silent killer in that one.
Assumption's like the silent killer in like literally everything we talk about.
Everything we've talked about. Assumption is the big overwhelming thing here. Really quick, I just want to bring up sort of something that I have seen personally in this, and that's, have you ever been around a person that has a significant other? They never have anything good to say about the significant other.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's annoying. Like,
Like they just constantly complaining, but they never break up with them. They're always staying together, but they never. What do you think that does to a relationship?
It poisons it. It toxifies it. it makes other people annoyed and resent you because all you gotta do is just yap, yap, yap. Like, do something about it, please. I can't help you in this space.
I'll say too, for the people listening, if you agree, at some point that could seriously bite you in the butt too. Like you have to be very careful about. Oh yeah, that sounds terrible, but don't ever call that other their spouse terrible because it could go south very quick.
It's like I don't get that. I don't. Okay, clearly I'm triggered. I'm gonna shut up now.
if you're saying all these things, you have to believe it on some level, right? I mean, don't you? And is that fair to your spouse? Because you are not. What are we doing? Not communicating with them again, right? We are instead just defaming your other half. And I just want to say, anybody who does this, I apologize. It makes you look bad too.
It almost is like
I argue.
Nobody.
Oh,
What if it's the opposite? Or no, never mind. Just continue with that.
Were they only saying good things about them? That's okay. We say, "Oh, they're in love. It's so cute."
No, I was gonna say like there's types of relationships where it's like, oh, you're like saying all these bad things in public, but in private, like you're very nice to your partner and you love on them.
I think that's what happens most of the time. I really do. I'm convinced that, I mean, yes, mind you, they're the ones that break up and get together, but it's really an indication of that person just likes to complain. Like, but then they're all loving. I don't know though. I'm not in that relationship. Thank God.
Honestly, I have a little bit more hope for the people who, even if they're fighting it out and duking it out inside of their relationships, if they're going outside of their relationships and talking well about their significant others, I've got hope for that because at least it shows on some level they're working through the ugly, and that looks different for every relationship. But when it comes to outside, behind their backs, even like in their presence, they're not going to throw them under the bus. And that in and of itself is commendable.
Well, I think that falls with catastrophizing too, though, is if you would hope that mind you should have a safe space for you to run things by. If things are, you should have a person that you can talk to and go, okay, am I bananas here for feeling this? Am I crazy? You know what I mean? Where you can run this by them, hopefully before you go off on your partner. But that should be a space that is safe and with somebody that understands that a coach. But that's a big difference than going to my cat is
like you're just doing.
Yeah.
So, but that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is it should be it should always be coming from a place of productivity, right? We should be trying to be productive and not destructive in these spaces.
That's one of my friends actually just jumped in.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up, Matt?
Hi, Matt.
I know. I'm trying to read what he wrote here.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a cultural norm around long-term relationships and marriage when it comes to people complaining about their significant others. It almost seems to be generational to some degree, and that likely comes down to what's been presented.
Boom.
Hold on, there's more.
As normal about relationships to those folks.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, that's portrayed in media. Really, that's portrayed as just like, oh, it's just quirky. That's just how it goes, you know.
I'm immediately thinking of Al Bundy and Peggy Bundy from
Love and Marriage.
I love that show so much. But yeah, that's the very stereotypical, just like complaining about your significant other 24/7.
Constructive, for sure. Which is interesting. We find destructive and non-functioning relationships to be hilarious.
Yeah,
which is funny. Can you think of a show, something in pop culture that demonstrates a very healthy relationship? I'm sure they're out there. What?
So this is
very healthy relationship.
A very healthy relationship. Yeah.
There was that one show, but it's not about a significant other. The Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Okay. I enjoyed the mother-daughter relationship and their ability to have fight, turn around, and come back.
I think Modern Family had some. If we're gonna go,
Yeah,
I, mean,
that's
I,
similar.
I don't
Stay
watch
with
TV.
me on this one.
Yeah.
Drake and Josh. Josh and Minnie. Them two
Oh,
had
okay.
those two had such a pure relationship. I'm not talking about Drake.
Miracle.
Yes.
Yeah, I love
I
that
get
show.
to be the boyfriend.
Whoa, bruh.
I say the parents in Ozark. I'm just kidding. I'm not sure if you guys know.
I was gonna
Totally
say
kidding.
Wait,
They're
the
the most destructive parents.
My husband's watching that show right now, and I would say, no way, no
Yeah,
way.
no. They're the most destructive parents on the face of the planet.
my joke answer was gonna be The Sopranos.
Yeah, no.
God damn it, Carmelo. And then my real answer, I thought of Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Uncle Phil, and
Ooh.
forgot the mom's name or his wife's name. Sorry, Mrs. Phil.
Mrs.
But they were good.
Used to is
The original one. There's a new one coming out, but you're talking about the original one.
Yeah, the original Fresh Prince. Aunt Viv. I think it's Aunt Viv.
It is nice.
Oh, another one. Morticia and Gomez Adams.
And they
yes.
speak language too. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, what is it, Mon Ami? And I love it. I love their gothic.
Oh, Carmela Moon.
Have you seen any relationships that are in real time that you would go, that's a really dynamic relationship as I see them.
I don't trust anything in social media, reality TV, or on so I have no clue. But I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's those long-standing, healthy relationships. They've been together. They've stood the test of time.
Oh yeah.
And you would assume, hopefully, those are healthy relationships. But I think that's one of the things. Again, where are we? What? How often do we have healthy relationships demonstrated for us? So how can we have an expectation for anybody to know? We have no clue unless we sort of do it yourself and talk about it. And on that same note, letting go of those expectations of anything you've seen really allows for you to sort of invent your own way, right? Whatever works for you too. If you let go of the expectations, the social norms, the society, whatever, and just have that this is what works for me. This is what works for me. I don't care about anybody else and what anybody thinks or what we should be doing or what people say, but this works for us. I think that's a really healthy way of approaching things. Is it realistic? I don't know.
I think it is. We've practiced it. Meaning in the sessions that's what is practiced. Is let's look at this from both of your perspectives. Let's find the meeting of the middle on the things that we don't agree about. What's the deal breakers? What is the definition of what we want and who we want to be in this relationship? I think is definitely workable. I've seen it.
I can say what.
Okay, go ahead, Jerome.
I was going to say what is unrealistic is to assume that your relationship is always going to be healthy. I think understanding that fact and understanding that there's recovery that comes with all relationships is a healthy relationship. You're going to go through your trials and tribulations. It's impossible to assume that, this relationship's going to be quote unquote healthy and there aren't going to be its bumps. I think a healthy relationship comes with an understanding that you will have to recover in certain instances and being transparent with that, whether that is with your partner or even with yourself.
I'm going to say, I think it's not, you can still have conflict and be a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
You can still have your trials and your tribulations, your moments of whatever it may be, and remain in. Actually, you probably should, because if you're not, you're probably robots. Which maybe and then if we're all robots, then this doesn't matter because our programming will handle that problem. Sorry, just zoning off into left field there. But it's that is maybe a label we should get away from. Is this concept of it's unhealthy for us to not always feel perfect, because that's just not human. It's not normal. That's not life. I also wanted to quickly touch on, even though we're running out of time, the idea of not just expectation coming from us in the relationship. Sometimes there's outside expectation that is applied that we listen to, whether it be parents, whether it be friends, whether it be, but there is this pressure from outside to behave, to do, because of one reason or another. And that, I mean, how do you stand up to that?
You tell them to go to hell.
Dang, wow. To some extent,
You just
you know,
zeroed it.
Yeah, honestly.
it's like to some extent you can at least recognize that they care enough about you and your partner to even put their input, solicited or otherwise. So obviously you're not obligated to take every piece of advice about relationships that come your way, but at least being thankful for the fact that, yeah, they gave that, and then you can decide what you want to apply, what you don't want to apply, understanding that at the end of the day, you and your partner are going to spend more time with each other in your most vulnerable places than the people on the outside looking in. So
Well, it's a bit of prioritizing too, right? Isn't it?
that's it.
Are you, who's the priority? Is my mom and what she expects a priority is, or is this relationship between you and I the priority?
Ooh, to some people would answer that differently.
Well, I mean, you have to, yeah, but that's at some point though, you have to go, okay, we're the priority here. Thank you. I'm going to listen here. I appreciate your input, but you are not in this relationship with me. You're not. And any relationship you have with my partner is separate from me. That's your relationship with them. So, we can, thank you. I appreciate you. Like you said, I'll take it under advisement, but beyond that, I cannot promise you anything. Which is, I think, fair. I would say so. All right, we're done. I've been talking too much. Somebody else is up. I'm done. It's your turn. Take over. Serious.
I think we're done with the live. We gotta get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think
somebody else sign off.
yeah, I think that's
All right. All right, now the screen's on Sam. Sam, go.
Okay, cool. I guess at the end of the day, everything can be a silent killer if it stays silent. As long as you bring it out to the light, you at least have a chance to discover what's going on, whether that's a gesture, whether that's a word, whether that's a belief. Just speak it out, open up, be courageous enough to be vulnerable, to know exactly where you stand with something. Otherwise, you're going to be tormented by imaginations and ghosts that may never come to pass. I'm done.
I'll say there is no glory, there is no award. You are not a hero for suffering in silence. Period. There's no reason. Don't do it.
All right, everybody, we're going to be signing off now. This has been CLCI Live. We do this every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Catch us next week. We're talking more relationship stuff. I don't know what we're doing. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe, and take our classes too. Be a coach. Go do that now, right now. Go sign up.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. Thank you all for joining us. And as everyone else has kind of been mentioning, we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at CertifiedLifeCoachInstitute.com. Until next time, be well.